Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Welcome to our Christmas Dogman special. 1 full hour of Dogman stories. Sounds great. Do you want to start or should I? Oh, neither of us are going to start. Huh? I don't get it. Well, our first Christmas Dogman story was sent in to us by a husband and wife. The husband's part is going to be read by PQ Ribber as Dr. Death, while the wife's part will be presented by Madeline Starr. Unless you would prefer that you and I perform the husband and wife instead. Oh, no. It sounds like you guys have everything under control. Take it away, Dr. Death.
Happy holidays! This episode, we have a holidays Dogman encounter story told from two perspectives. First, I'll read a very short and to-the-point narrative sent to us from a butler in an estate mansion on the border of a medium-sized forest. Then, Madeline Starr will read the much longer account of a woman who worked as a caterer at that mansion who claims to have come within a few feet of a dogman and seen the creature in detail. Lower the lights and fasten your seatbelt. Here's the story from the butler's own email. Dogman at the Christmas Feast, as told to Peter Bernard, read by PQ Ribber. Dear Scary Stories, I'm writing because my wife wants someone to back up her account of seeing the infamous Dogman outside the estate that we both work in. I've not read what she's written, but I will now tell you everything I know, and you can compare her account with mine and decide for yourself. I am head of the house staff here, and 2 Christmases ago, the mistress of the estate hired a catering company I was unfamiliar with to serve food at a 3-day weekend Christmas party. The catering company was run by 2 sisters. I had never met either of them before. However, the younger one is now my wife. She claims to have been attacked by a hairy, dog-like man-type creature. I saw the thing from the rear and fired over its head. My wife will supply greater details in her account. Since that event, I've seen the creature 3 or possibly 4 times. The last time, the creature appeared differently, with close-cropped, dark-colored, shiny hair, so I'm thinking that was probably something else I saw. All previous times, what I saw most closely resembled a very shaggy dog who grew to human height and stood on its hind legs. It had pointed ears sticking up out of the fur the first and second times I saw it. The other times I saw the shaggy body, but not the head. The legs appear like a man walking on his toes, so in a sense, sort of like dog legs, but not quite. The last creature I saw was an Anubis-like thing, not at all resembling the shaggy creature or creatures seen previously. In each case, other than the first, I witnessed the creature within the edge of the tree line. I have not witnessed it coming back onto the master's property since the first incident, but I carry a weapon with me when going out and back of the mansion at night just in case. I know this sounds crazy, but I swear that this, and my wife's statement to follow, are both 100% true. And then he signs it with his name, which we won't reveal here. Next, we'll bring on Madeline Starr, who will give us the butler's wife's story. Her account is very detailed in explaining the background of the tale, so if you want to skip straight to the Dogman part, you can probably jump a whole long way in there. You'll miss a good true story, but that's your option. Be back with Madeline Starr right after this. take a moment to say that if you have a scary story you'd like to tell us here, you can write Peter at peterbernard.com, or you can call our new Scary Stories hotline number and leave it to us in the form of a voicemail message. It's easy to remember. 804-LESCARY. That's 804-LESCARY, or 804-537-2279.
A Dogman Christmas, as told to Peter Bernard, read by Madeline Starr. Do you have friends or relatives who offer to help you because they're so concerned about your well-being? And yet the more they help you, the worse your life seems to get? Well, one Christmas, my sister helped me into an encounter where I might have been killed by Dogman. When I grew up, my older sister Dee Dee always got all the attention. She was the pretty one, she was the fashionable one, she got better grades, she was more popular. She would always try to help me, which consisted of her trying to make me her little twin sister. At first, I competed with her, but that was pointless, as it was clear I could never win at anything she was good at. I gave up and retreated into myself. I became what she called bookish and nerdy. The more girly she got, the more tomboyish I became. If I couldn't be as stylish as she was, I'd be anti-stylish. When she wore a designer dress and $700 booties, I wore ripped jeans and Converse All-Star sneakers. About the only things Dee Dee wasn't mega talented at were artistic things. She couldn't sing or play an instrument or paint or anything creative at all. Probably for this reason, I started writing and drawing my own comics, which I published online. Dee Dee was not an artist, so that meant I would be. I wanted to be as different from her as possible. As soon as I could, I moved out of home and worked various terrible day jobs in order to support my cartooning. I heard that in the old days they used to pay cartoonists so much money that they rode around in limousines. But that's when comics used to get published in these antique things printed on pieces of dead trees. I think they called them newspapers or something archaic like that. Those days are gone. My most popular comic at its peak used to earn me about $25 a month. And that was with thousands of fans and plenty of jealous haters furious at me for being too successful. So although I was proud to be the first of us to move out, I wasn't as proud that I was also the first to struggle financially. The first to almost get evicted, the first to get fired from 3-day jobs in 1 month, plus other dubious distinctions. By the time my older sister Dee Dee made the offer about 2.5 or 3 years ago, I was desperate. If I didn't raise my rent money, I was going to have to move back with my mother. Mom is a sweetie, but you don't want to live with her. Just trust me on that, because I'm not going to get into details. So, when Dee Dee offered me a full partnership in her catering company, I figured I'd do it until I could get a better job, and at least I wouldn't have to move back home. Once I had agreed, Dee went into full mad scientist mode, giving me a makeover. By the time it was done, I was her personal mini-me, a 4-inch shorter version of her divine majesty. I had always had naturally dark hair and had never colored it. Now I was a redhead like Dee Dee. I used to have thick eyebrows, but boys told me they were cute. Now I had these tiny, stupid-looking eyebrows that I thought made me look surprised or dim-witted all the time. She made me take an actual class downtown about how to walk in high heels, and she would fine me if she found me frowning on the job. Frowning was what I was mainly known for. I didn't smile for my yearbook photo. Now I was smiling like an idiot, even when customers were rude or insulting to me. Supposedly, we were 50-50 partners. But since our deal was that I would share in profits, and at this early stage there were none, I was really basically her slave. She had finally won the battle we had been waging our entire lives. It was like every moment of my life was now me trying and failing to be her. I stopped drawing almost entirely and moved in with Dee to save on rent. My life was no longer my own. So Christmas 2015 fell on a Friday, and Dee Dee used her connections to get us our first really big catering assignment, which was a 3-day-long sleepover Christmas party for some of the movers and shakers upstate. There were Congress people there, local TV news people, and my favorite weather lady said she loved my baklava. My sister would design and sew these stupid matching outfits we'd have to wear. For this 3-day event, she actually designed 3 different outfits so that we'd be dressed differently each day. They all were variations on traditional waitstaff outfits mixed with girly Christmas elf outfits. The skirts were all much shorter than I was interested in wearing. I asked her to let me wear pants, but she wanted me completely out of my comfort zone and into hers. She'd put in ruffles and bows and ties, and basically everything she knew I never wanted to be seen in. She'd strut around proudly showing her outfit off, while I felt humiliated and hated to even make eye contact. But I did it anyway, because Dee Dee drilled it into my head that this was part of the job. Smile and make eye contact. I did both as instructed, but I was usually blushing, and my head faced the floor even as my eyes and mouth directed insincere smiles at these people, so much more important than myself. I had gone hungry at earlier points in my life, but this still felt to me like hitting rock bottom. I had very little self-respect left. For this party, we had to work under the direction of the mansion's head butler. He was unhappy with us before we got there because he had wanted to handle this party in-house, with his friend, the house's on-staff chef, preparing the food. How my sister swung a catering gig in a mansion that already had a chef, I'm sure I never want to know. But she had made an enemy of this butler dude in the process. Let's call him Jeremy, which is not his real name. He raised his voice and insulted her in the kitchen on our first morning there, something which I had never seen happen before. He caught me hiding my smile and suppressing a laugh, and he gave me a wink. I felt myself blushing, and I had to leave the room before Dee Dee saw. Whenever she noticed a guy liked me, she'd do something to ruin it. Don't worry, I'm getting to Dogman. If I don't explain the people who were there first, you won't understand the Dogman parts later. Anyway, by Saturday night, Jeremy and I had become pretty good friends, and it was getting harder and harder to hide it from my sister. He stole me away at one point and brought me to some part of the mansion that was off limits to me and Dee. He offered me champagne. I was famous for never really getting drunk, no matter how much beer or wine I drank, so I said okay. I had never had champagne before, though, and it went right to my head. I giggled at the thought of an exotic, sophisticated man stealing me away from my sister. I told him that I was usually the one looking around for Dee after some handsome man had made off with her. I asked him why he had chosen me when she was there. He put great passion into his explanation of how Dee Dee was a Philistine, whereas I had the soul of a poet. That was true. And he pointed out that she was a bossy, bragging windbag, whereas I was shy, kind, and respectful of the people around me. That was true also. Then, he said that he hated her for being a phony, whereas I was a 100% natural redhead who smiled genuinely all the time and wouldn't change my look for anyone. Okay, 2 out of the 3 wasn't bad. He was the first guy who ever liked me better than Dee, so I could overlook if he were occasionally confused. I was just so happy that he liked me, and I never wanted it to end. If he liked my smile, then I liked it too. He said he liked my outfit, and I told him I sewed it. I told him I sewed them all. It wasn't exactly a lie, because Dee did make me help her here and there. Soon his sweet talk had me more inebriated than the champagne, and I was having a hard time remembering my how to walk in heels lessons. The memory goes a bit fuzzy at this point, but it's possible, just possible, I may have given Loverboy a little kiss. My sister Dee Dee believed that this conspiracy theory about me kissing the butler was actually fact, merely because she walked in the room while Jeremy and I were kissing. I call that circumstantial evidence. She grabbed me by the arm and pulled me back to the kitchen, shouting something or other at me. How did she even get into this part of the mansion? Didn't she know it was off limits to people like her? So I guess either to punish me or to sober me up, she gave me the assignment of taking all the garbage out. The way this mansion was set up, you had to take the garbage out of the kitchen around the back of the house, where it was really dark and a dense forest was only like 20 or 30 feet away. Then up to these garbage cans kept inside a creepy old garage. Now, I want it clear that this house had fancy toilets that flushed and cleansed themselves, and a refrigerator with a TV screen on the outside so you could see what was inside without opening the door. When it came to the modern conveniences for the owners, no expense was spared. When it came to the servants, however, you may as well have been a butler, cook, or maid in a 1930s Three Stooges movie. No improvements had been made in generations, and so before I was sober enough to understand what was happening, my sister had put one heavy plastic bag of garbage in each of my hands and shoved me out into the freezing cold night. The bags were too heavy for me to carry both at once, and I didn't want to mess up Dee Dee's stupid catering outfit. So I grabbed one huge bag with both hands and began pulling it behind me around toward the forest on the way to the garbage cans. When I took about 3 or 4 steps into the snow in my tall shoes, it slowly started to dawn on my inebriated, half-sleeping mind that I was out in the cold, in snow, wearing pumps and a ridiculous short-sleeved, frilly mockery of a waitstaff outfit. I sobered up very quickly and realized that I was only about a third of the way to the garage and still had another bag to get after this. My feet were already cold and wet. I was miserable realizing that I would have to change my wet stockings when I got back inside, and that these shoes might be ruined. They were designer knockoffs that we got for, I think, $20 or $30, but I knew that $20 or $30 was going to get taken out of my pay for this gig. I said out loud, "How could my life possibly get any worse?" And I heard a branch snap in the forest to my right. Time froze as I willed my eyes to adjust to the darkness quickly. They were about as adjusted as they were going to get, but I couldn't see anything. I convinced myself it was a branch snapping under the weight of snow, and I went back to dragging the bag. I could swear I heard something in the woods, so I stopped. The sound stopped too. Was it an echo? I decided I was going to get this garbage duty over as quickly as possible. With adrenaline and fear giving me extra strength, I nearly ran to the garage, never slipping one time. Once inside, I threw the garbage in the can, then cursed my sister under my breath. I still had to bring the other bag here, and my feet were already wet and cold anyway. I had to keep moving. So back down the side of the house I went, through the snow and the dark, hugging myself to try to retain any bit of warmth. There it was again. That noise. Someone was following me through the woods. It sounded like a man. I stopped and the noise stopped. I took a step and I heard it again from the woods. Then I noticed something weird. I tapped one shoe 3 times on the stone walkway in front of me and heard 3 taps back. Either there really was an echo, or else I was being pursued through the forest by someone in very loud and wet 4-inch heels. Shivering, I got to the kitchen door as quickly as I could. I decided I better get my jacket from inside and tried to open the door. It was locked. Banging hard on the door, I shouted for my sister. She pulled the inside drape aside and smirked at me through the door glass. I saw her mouth silently say, "One more bag." Then she walked away. She wouldn't come back no matter how hard I banged. Now my hands were sore and I was shivering all over. I had to quit working with my sister. Nearly crying, I began dragging this incredibly heavy garbage back the way I had already been, when it caught on a rock and tore open. I was so cold I didn't even hesitate before getting down and figuring out how to pick up this broken bag. There was no way I was going to be able to do it in one piece. I got ripped plastic around about half the garbage and lifted it up. Guess what it smelled like? It smelled like garbage. I held it as far from me as possible and began tottering to the garage. I heard the sound of someone in the forest tracking me, but I just didn't care anymore. It had to be an echo. Once inside the garage, I managed to get most of the trash into a can. I remember bouncing up and down to get warm and looking out the door at the rest of the garbage I still had to pick up, when it just walked right in front of the door and stared at me. It was like a man in a ghillie suit, all long, loose hair, all over, but it was white and gray hair mixed, not camouflage colors. On top it had a head like a dog, but not like a wolf. Its snout wasn't that long, but it was a dog-like snout. It did not have pointed ears, it had floppy dog ears. I couldn't really see its eyes very well, as they were mostly hidden by hair. It moved forward and I screamed and stepped as far back against the most distant wall as I could. The creature banged against the door and growled at me. Just then the glass in the door smashed in. I was pretty sure that was the end for me. Then I heard a shot. I was curled into a ball under a shelf, shivering and pretty much in shock, and I heard a lot of noise and shouting. When a hand touched me, I screamed and beat it away. Then I saw it was Jeremy, and I just wept. He got me wrapped in blankets and drove me to the hospital. He saved my life. He saved my life, which was in danger because my sister was playing power games. I recovered quickly, and Jeremy had gotten me a job in his house as his assistant before I was even released from the hospital. I was free from my sister and working all day, every day, with the man I loved. We were married the next summer. This Christmas will be 2 years since we met, and we've both made up with Dee Dee a long time back. Since then, she's colored her hair blonde twice and black once, but she chuckles every time she sees that I still have the same hairstyle and color that I protested so much when she gave me. I also do my eyebrows that painstaking way she showed me. I'm a living tribute to Dee Dee in 2015. Why? Well, Jeremy thinks that's my natural look. Why else? He also let me design my uniform for the job, which I had to get Dee to actually do for me. So I'm free of her in a sense, but she feels like she's one in another. As for Dogman, he is still right there in that forest. I've seen him once since then, and Jeremy, who now takes out the garbage himself, has seen the monster, I think, 3 or 4 times. So 99% of the time you're not going to encounter him, but it's that 100th time that scares you silly every single time you go out there. Nobody in that area ever reported seeing the creature before I did, but I bet he's been there for years. It just goes to show that you don't have to be in the middle of nowhere to encounter the unknown. I never saw a monster in my life until I went to work in this very expensive, very exclusive town. We're left with one unmistakable, undeniable truth. There is no place in America, in which you can truly claim to be safe from Dogman.
How did you like that? I thought it was a little rude. Rude? What was rude? The way he fired over the Dogman's head? What had he even done wrong? He was just standing there. Oh, okay. Well, our next story, maybe he was going to offer help. Maybe he was going to help the lady with the rest of her spilled garbage. How do you know? You don't know, because the guy started firing rounds off before even introducing himself. It's just so rude. Are you done? I think so. Is it time for our next story? It will be after this.
Do you have a scary story you want us to read on the show? Just call our voicemail hotline, 804-LIST-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. And now for something completely scary.
Dogman Wrecks Christmas. As told to Peter Bernard. Read by PQ River. Have you heard that term, the wolf is at the door? This is a story about that in both the figurative and literal sense. In this case, the wolf is not just there because it's hungry. It's there because it's Christmas. It's there to spoil a night of goodness with its foul stench. It is living evil, jealously clawing at the love between my boy and me, wanting to take even that from us. I can't mention my or my family's names because I got involved in a workplace whistleblower controversy which resulted in a court case that drained my family's finances. We have very little privacy as it is. This caused stress between myself and my wife, who left me, taking my son with her. My friends told me they both hated me now. Not just my wife, but my son as well. All of this happened because I exposed the corruption of others who were all still solvent and happily married, undisturbed from before. Sometimes life isn't fair, and this was one of those times. I sold our home to pay much of my lawyer's bill, and I was staying in our summer home, which was really just a small cabin out in the middle of nowhere. It was fun there during the warm months, but the winter was sort of like the story of the Pilgrims, if you know what I mean. I was trying also to sell the cabin so I could afford to move somewhere if and when I was able to land a new job. With the controversy surrounding me, I was having no luck in my search for employment so far. The rejection from my family hurt the worst of all, and I miss them both terribly. It happened so suddenly, it was almost like, bam, there was my son being delivered to me by my wife's sister. I had been sleeping, so the whole event seemed surreal. I wasn't sure what was happening when my son grabbed me and hugged me around my waist. Did I really have my son back? And if so, why? I made instant hot cocoa because I was almost out of anything else, and my sister-in-law, let's call her B, explained how my wife, let's call her A, had left our son, let's call him C, with her, B, then moved on to, quote, find herself, unquote. Therefore, B was delivering him back to me. I asked if my wife was in trouble, and B responded, only in her head. She said her sister C still texted daily, so she wasn't dead or anything, but that she didn't want me or anyone having her new number yet. As soon as B's visit was over, the first thing I did was inspect my food supply. I definitely did not have enough to sustain myself and the boy for long. I'd have to try some hunting and some ingenuity. The next day, I left C in the cabin and went out hunting for about 2 hours. I just missed a rabbit, and that was the closest I got. My growling stomach and I started wondering if there was anything in the cabin that might be worth selling on eBay. When I got back, I couldn't find my son anywhere. Panicking, I started calling his name and racing about. I eventually found him, hiding in the corner of my bedroom behind the bed, shivering. It took a lot of patience to get him up and a lot of hugging and reassuring before he would tell me what had happened while I was gone. I saw a dog man. He told me flat out. You mean like a wolf man? I asked. He said no. It was a dog man like on the internet. He said he was watching it through the living room window off in the distance in the snow. He said he was watching it like it was on TV. Then, all of a sudden, the dog man noticed he was being watched. What happened? I asked. He got mad, I was told, and then the faucets got turned on and we had ourselves a long cry. By the next morning, C didn't want to talk about it anymore. He just wanted me to promise not to leave him alone again while we were out here. I figure that's all this was about, and the dog man, was just a fantasy designed to get my attention. Ignorance is bliss. I took the boy into the closest town to see about getting him enrolled in whatever school they thought he should be going to. I explained the odd circumstances of my family situation, and then explained it again to another person, and then was sent somewhere else to repeat the same painful and personal story over again so that they could understand that I had a son, they had a school system, and perhaps my son should be in their system. There was another father there because his son had been involved in a fist fight, and he overheard me pleading my case. He asked me if I needed work, and I said yes, desperately. He owned a pharmacy and hired me at a low-level position far beneath my station. I was never so happy to be hired before or since. The job saved my life and my boys as well. At least now we knew we would eat, and on Christmas we would feast. A job that I would never have considered only 6 months ago now brought hope back to me and my son. Except that when I told my boy, he burst out in tears, reminding me that I promised not to leave him alone while we were out here. There would be 2 hours after his school before I would be able to care for him, and that terrified the poor kid. I began to wonder if maybe he had really seen something that genuinely frightened him. Maybe it wasn't just his imagination. I explained the situation to my new boss, and we cut a deal where I could take a break from work, pick up both our kids, and bring them to the pharmacy. We would set up a playroom in the back where they could go do their homework or play games, and everyone was happy enough. My son and I grew very close, and we both appreciated every moment we got to spend together. We no longer took anything for granted. If this moment is okay, then enjoy it. Don't stress out because the next moment might not be as okay. Love and respect the people in your life. Realize they are all divine beings inhabiting these temporary identities we take so seriously. It's a rare thing in the world to be blessed and lucky, and it's even more rare to realize it when you are. But that was a moment in time when my son and I knew we had each other for Christmas, and we knew we might never have this again. So we were fully enjoying ourselves and appreciating each other. I didn't have to yell at him to do his chores or get in bed on time. The tough situations we found ourselves in caused us to view ourselves as a team, fighting for a common cause. That year, when we watched Linus on TV talking about peace on earth and goodwill toward men, it felt both more personal and more transcendent. On Christmas Eve, we had to stay late at the pharmacy because the other local drugstore in the neighborhood closed early. The idea was we might catch some of their business and maybe turn that into repeat business. There were 3 customers that whole afternoon and evening, and by the time my boy and I were heading home, it was lightly snowing. We were in a festive mood driving home. I played a CD of Christmas songs and we both sang along merrily. The same forested stretch of road that looked scary most other winter nights looked charming and inviting when snow was falling on the scene. We relaxed, began to feel as if we were home already when something large ran out on the road in front of the car. I swerved desperately to avoid hitting it. We spun out of control, doing 3 complete 360s before being stopped by a tree slamming hard. I saw it each time we spun around. It was what my son had told me he had seen. It was a tall creature with dark or maybe black fur, a long, wolf-like snout, and tall, pointed ears. It seemed to smile at us or leer at us. Maybe it was just baring its teeth. It was a dog man. Neither myself nor my son was hurt, but our car was now tangled up in the tree and its roots, and I couldn't start the car engine. My son was crying and staring out the cracked windshield. I looked where he was looking, and I saw. The dog man was grinning at us. We made eye contact, and he began walking in our direction. I had us out of that car and running faster than you could inhale, but there was no way my boy could keep up, so I had to carry him in front of me and run as quickly as I could. It was difficult to see over him, so he would warn me when a branch was ahead, and he also told me the dogman had stopped following us. I didn't put him down till the house was in sight. I barely remember locking the house and closing the shutters. Then I must have laid down on the couch, where I woke up with a start a few hours later. My son had dropped a pot in the kitchen. He was hungry, but didn't want to wake me up, so he had started trying to make dinner himself. Apparently there had been no further incidents with the dogman, so we set about preparing a Christmas feast worthy of a king, but intended for us. After dinner, which was magnificent, if I do say so myself, I read a book I found when I bought the cabin, of very old Christmas ghost stories, until the boy was snoring. I was exhausted and wanted to crash, but I knew it was time for me to sneak out to the car and get the boy's Christmas presents out of the trunk where I'd been hiding them. Sleepily, I tossed on my rubber boots but didn't close them. They flopped about my ankles as I walked out the front door, leaving it open behind me. It was cold out, but at least the air was fresh. I wanted to get some oxygen inside before I went to sleep. My heater kept it warm, but made the air feel flat and dead. Out to the car I squished and flopped, then I opened the trunk. I grabbed the presents and piled them one by one on a dry patch of ground, then put an effort into closing the hood without making a big slamming sound. I didn't want to wake the boy. I ended up only sort of closing it. I'd probably have to sit on it in the morning to get it fully shut before I'd be able to get it open again. While I was fussing with the trunk lock, I got a weird feeling that I was being watched. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw lights in the forest. Gazing directly over, I wasn't sure if I could see them anymore. When I looked away, though, I could see them again out of the corner of my eye. Was it lights? Or maybe eye shine? I turned to face the area I thought I saw them in and cupped my hands around my eyes to block out the light coming from our Christmas decorations. I waited for my eyes to adjust, and I was almost certain I was seeing eye shine, but it was yellow. I once saw a raccoon at night that had yellow eye shine, but these eyes were up too high. "A raccoon in a tree," I said out loud, laughing. "Mr. Raccoon, I have to admit you scared me for a second." Then the raccoon started to growl. That must be a very large raccoon. I heard branches cracking and someone or something large advancing through the snow toward me. I knew what it had to be. I grabbed my boy's presents up in both arms and flopped and squished as quickly as I could in my loose winter boots to my back door and tripped inside, spraying the presents across the floor as I fell flat on my face in the living room, with my feet still technically outside the house. Rising to my knees, I tried to close the door, but it was stuck on something. The monster was seconds from being on top of me. Leaving the door open, trembling over my entire body, I scrambled inside on all fours. I thought at first about getting my rifle, but it was in my bedroom. I'd have to run past my son's room to get it. Not only would I likely wake him, I'd be leading the monster right to him. I had to find a weapon in this room and stand my ground to defend C while he slept. I grabbed 2 of the irons by the fireplace and swung wildly at the creature as it came storming right through our door, just barreling in like it owned the place. I've read and heard accounts since this incident where witnesses claim they saw dogmen be unfazed by bullets. Well, this dogman was not like that. He reacted in pain and loudly when I struck it. That filled me with hope that I could somehow drive the creature back out of the house. All my hope was dashed in the next second as the creature casually slapped me down to the floor with the back of its hand. The fire irons went crashing in one direction, and I went in another. The monster wasn't even using much of its strength, and the fight was already over. I was still catching my breath when I saw it walk over me and look down. Its drool falling from its lower lip and landing on me somewhere. I couldn't believe this was the last thing I would ever see. Then the loudest sound in history happened. It was my rifle going off just feet from me. I couldn't see where it was being shot from, but I saw where it hit, square in the middle of the dogman's chest. Squealing and howling like a dog being whipped with a newspaper, the dogman slammed its huge body through my cabin's small door and was gone. I turned my body around, and I saw my son crying and shaking, drop the rifle to the floor, and faint. The rest of the story involves a lot of boring stuff. Both of us recovering from the shock and finding a new place to live where we felt safe. Both my son and I have a bit of post-traumatic stress disorder concerning the woods, and we needed to move closer to town as soon as we could manage. So now, it's almost a year later, and the ex-wife wants her son back for Christmas. We decided to compromise and let her visit him at her sister's place when we go see her on Christmas Eve. She lives in a very urban part of a very large city, and that's why both my son and I want to spend the holiday there. Neither of us want to end up spending Christmas Eve on Dogman's turf ever again.
Well, our time is almost up. Already? The stories seem to go so much faster when it's not you telling them. Thank you. And I might say the same about you. You know, I have a confession. This next story isn't really a Christmas story at all. It isn't? No. Christmas dinner is mentioned at one point, but that's about as close as it gets. Well, is it about Dogman? Yes. Yes, it is a Dogman encounter tale. Well, bring it on. And Merry Christmas to all of you out there. Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays to everyone watching.
Dogman sent me to the hospital. As told to Peter Bernard. Read by Madeline Starr. I heard a story on your channel in which Bigfoot hunters encountered Dogman. I have a story that's similar in some ways to that one, but when my Bigfoot hunting team ran into Dogman, it resulted in multiple injuries and me spending almost a week in the hospital. This happened about 5 years ago now, or 6, when I used to be part of a Sasquatch research team, whose team initials shall remain nameless. But for the sake of this story, I will call my friends Kathleen, Kurt, and Harry. Now, I don't want to be critical of the people who do this, since I was once a very enthusiastic, if naive, Bigfoot hunter myself. I also don't want anyone to think I'm saying that Bigfoot hunting is bad or wrong, and I don't want in any way to discourage anyone from doing it if they are called to it. But I do want to say that unlike those TV shows, it's something best left for those who are physically fit, experienced woods people to pursue. On television, there have been shows for the past decade, or a bit longer, about severely out-of-shape individuals going out into the forest to hunt monsters. Even if you don't encounter a monster when you're out, you will encounter darkness and unsure footing and possibly other kinds of wildlife. I see some folks going out Bigfoot hunting with less preparation than they would put into camping. The forest is more dangerous at night, not less. Whatever efforts you put into security in terms of your camping, you should redouble the effort if you're actually going to walk around in the dark in the wilderness. Even leaving Bigfoot entirely out of the equation, you need to take seriously any trip into any kind of forest. Add Bigfoot back in, and you'd better not be joking around. There's another thing about Bigfoot I want to say before I get into the Dogman story. People who love Sasquatch have been saying for years that Sasquatches are shy individuals and they mean us no harm. From this assumption, they jump to the presumption that this means it's safe for humans or even kids to want to go be with the Sasquatches, Harry and the Hendersons and all that. Let's examine. Why do people think Bigfoot are shy? Because when Bigfoot notice them, they often go away? That's the entirety of the reason, isn't it? Do you know what bears do when we encounter them in nature? They usually run away from us, just like Bigfoot. So why don't we refer to bears as shy and friendly? Why don't we act like it's okay for kids to go up and be friends with them? In fact, it's illegal for humans to have too much contact with bears, because eventually the bears will eat the humans. Then they will have a taste for human blood, and they will need to be put down at great expense to the state and at a great loss to nature. Something that never gets talked about is that if Sasquatch are declared officially to exist by the powers that be, it would be of a necessity to soon follow that at least some kinds of searching for Sasquatch would be declared illegal. Some people would want it illegal on the grounds that it's dangerous to humans. Others would argue that it should be illegal because it's harassing this other semi-human species. And both would have strong arguments on their side. My argument is merely that Bigfoot hunting should only be undertaken by physically fit individuals who are experienced in the woods, properly equipped with the latest equipment, and who are respectful of the environment they are entering, including all the wildlife within it. That was not a description of my group. I was the only one in shape, and no, I'm not prejudiced against people of different body types. I'm still friends with everyone in the group, and I even dated one of them. But this story will explain to you why I think Bigfoot hunting is an athletic pursuit and one that should only be undertaken by those prepared for the occasion. There are plenty of things that people with big bones can excel at, but if you want to be running through the woods at midnight, you should put some training and preparation into it. That's just how I feel. I didn't feel this way, though, until after this Dogman experience happened to me that I'm about to relate. Okay, there we were, the four of us, Kathleen, Kurt, Harry, and me, in the woods in Washington State. We had saved up and planned for over a year to make this trip, but we were incredibly unprepared anyway once we got there. We did have night vision on 2 of our cameras, but we did not have night vision goggles, and we had no heat sensing apparatus. We had no special microphones or recording equipment. We had no guns or weapons of any kind to defend ourselves with, as though we were going on vacation to Disneyland. We were just basically two fangirls and two fan guys that were in the woods with nothing to defend ourselves with in case we came under attack. Don't try this at home, kids. We had been out tree knocking and yowling and howling like what we thought Bigfoot sounded like through the early part of the night. We didn't get any responses at all. Then, after it got darker, we just decided to wander around listening and not try to actively pursue direct contact as much. We had so much emotion invested in seeing a Bigfoot, but we also got incredibly excited each time we got to see things like bears or even deer. We had no idea that what we would be seeing later that night was something even more rare than a Sasquatch. So rare that at that time, I had not even heard that such a thing might exist. There was a sound of branches snapping nearby. Kurt, the one I used to date, saw the creature first. It was too tall to be a man, so that left bear, bison, elk, maybe a large male deer with antlers, or maybe it might be a Sasquatch. We decided to move closer. Without heat-sensing video and proper weapons for defense against a large attacker, this was a stupid move on our part. But we moved forward toward the immense figure in the forest that we hoped would be an uncatalogued apex predator. In civilization, we were all considered above average intelligence, but in the forest, we were making decisions just as foolish as this constantly. We thought we were quite stealthy and silent, but when we got within about 50 feet of our target, we could hear the bushes rattling, and we realized the creature was now aware of our presence. Then we heard it howl on the other side of the brush. It didn't shout or bellow, it howled like a dog or wolf. On TV, they say sometimes howls heard in the forest are from canines, and other times it's Bigfoot imitating canines. So as far as we were concerned, that dog howl constituted final proof that we were about to meet an actual living Sasquatch creature. How thrilling! Still hypnotized by years of self-proclaimed cryptozoologists telling us on TV that Bigfoot is our furry friend, we stood our ground excitedly. If we thought it was a bear, we might have run or played dead, but we thought it was a creature larger and more frightening than a bear. So we just stood there like, yay, Bigfoot! We were like a turkey that bakes itself for you and sits on your plate waiting to be eaten for Christmas dinner. Come and get it, Bigfoot! Only what crashed through the woods was not Bigfoot. It was as large as Bigfoot, that's for sure. It had to be 8 feet tall if it was an inch. It wasn't a man and it wasn't an animal. It was a booger. But it was a booger with a dog's head. It was an angry, tall, dog-headed monster man, and it now had us in its sights. It crashed through the woods into the clearing in front of us and roared. At first, I thought I was looking at an orangutan. Then I thought maybe an orange-colored, very long-haired Bigfoot. It stood tall like a man, not hunched over like an ape. The hair on its body was long and hung straight and loose, like an orangutan. But it covered his entire body, including the chest area, which was quite broad, like that of a human weightlifter. Although I only saw it for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, the main impression I got from it was one of massive power and athleticism. The thing looked like it had all the strength of an elephant condensed down into an 8-foot-tall monster. But it wasn't a Bigfoot monster, it was a dog man. Although it had to be heavier than any man who ever lived. It stood somehow on hind legs shaped like those of a dog. Granted, they were far thicker than the legs of any dogs ever, but that was still their basic form. He did not wobble on them like a dog dancing on its hind paws. It stood sturdily and solidly, appearing as though a grenade couldn't sway it an inch. The head looked like some sort of demonic golden retriever, but with pointed German shepherd ears, large eyes, and larger fangs. The teeth, all ending in points, reminded me of a collection of large daggers, lined up on top and on bottom. I had seen teeth like them before, but I think it was on a dinosaur skeleton at the museum. Long and sharp, each of them built to stab and incapacitate prey, which could then be swallowed whole. I thought in a microsecond that maybe this meant it would be disinterested in prey as large as humans. In the next microsecond, I noticed the creature was eyeing us all and drooling. It looked like he considered us on his menu. To me, the eyes seemed to glow and throb yellow and red. The other three only remembered the eyes being a yellowy orange and didn't talk about them glowing at all. But to me, this creature's eyes seemed lit from within like some sort of mechanical creature. I do not, however, think that it was mechanical, as it smelled quite organic. I did not smell it until it was directly in front of us. But then it was like being hit in the face with a litter box or something. It choked off the oxygen. That's how dense its odor was. Start with wet dog smell. Now imagine it having ammonia added to the mix to make it even less desirable to be around. It makes your nose itch and your eyes burn. It's not just unpleasant, it's toxic and instantly bad for your health. Then imagine it somehow being even worse than what I described. And now you're getting an idea of what this thing felt like to be around. I remember at the time feeling nauseous at the sight of this dog-headed fellow. He didn't fit any of my preconceived notions. He wasn't a man, he wasn't a dog, he wasn't a Sasquatch. Up till that point, I had debated in my head whether it would be possible for a species of large predators to remain hidden from humans in the United States of America. After all, mainstream science holds that the existence of a creature like that would be impossible. Now suddenly, I'm supposed to believe that there are at least 2 such hidden creatures? And yet here were my eyes, my ears, my nose, and my entire sensory nervous system telling me that yes, in fact, there is a giant superhuman golden werewolf man with glowing eyes walking around in the forests of America. And right now, it's about to eat us all for dinner. We ran away. I know they say not to run away from a predator, but this was the most terrifying thing any of us had ever seen, and we just ran away. Right off a cliff. The 2 men were in front demonstrating their gallantry, I suppose, by abandoning us to their rear. They both flew off the muddy cliff at full speed and crashed into the embankment on the other side. They ended up with grass and dirt in their mouths, but their worst injuries were a few bruises. Kathleen and I, on the other hand, we heard the boys slip and we heard them scream, so we both tried to stop ourselves before we got to the cliff. Poor Kathy had too much momentum and not enough muscle power, so she went right over the edge. I couldn't see in the darkness how deep the drop was going to be. I had safely stopped myself before going over, but in that split second I made a decision to try to grab my friend and pull her back to safety. I got her by her backpack, but Kathy, no offense to the girl, as she is one of the sweetest people you will ever meet, but Kathy was so heavy in those days that it was no contest. Gravity won, me 0. We both rolled and tumbled down the wet, muddy, steep incline and landed on a bunch of large, solid, rounded rocks down below, in what I guess used to be a riverbed. From what the boys told me later, those rocks were basically only directly under the ledge. If we had jumped out even a few feet, we'd have cleared them and both probably have been fine. It was only a 15 or 20-foot drop. In the dark, with us panicking, grabbing at anything and rolling over and over, banging into each other, we made the fall far worse than it should have or would normally have been. I was not skilled enough in the wild, nor was I familiar enough with the area. Again, I reiterate that Bigfoot hunting, or any work or play out in the wilderness at night, is best undertaken by experienced woods people, not amateurs like we were. Kathy and I were out like a light for the rest of the story and woke up in the hospital. We weren't in beds next to each other like in the movies, but the boys came around to visit each of us once we were recovering, and they pieced the rest of the story together for us. Kurt ran and got help while Harry stayed with us. He said nothing came out of the woods after us, and that was fortunate since he had no weapons of any kind with which to defend us. It took hours to get us out of there, but obviously they eventually succeeded. Kathleen was out of the hospital in a day because I cushioned her blow. I, on the other hand, was in the hospital days longer and for the exact same reason. Every time I think about what happened that night, I wonder why the creature didn't follow us out of the woods. Did it figure there were too many of us? Was it never actually after us in the first place? Was it only trying to scare us off its turf? Or what about the weirder possibilities? Did it return to its own reality? Could it only follow us so far because its ability to exist in our frequency dissipated? Was it an illusion in the first place? Was it a holograph projection? Was it some other kind of creature or intelligence that could either shapeshift or cast illusions around itself to appear to be something else? Or could we all have just been mistaken in what we thought we saw? Could it have been a bear or large dog, a huge mutated wolf, a person in a dogman costume, or a ghillie suit with a dog mask on top? Maybe a dog mask with lit up eyes? The sighting was so short that I can't personally rule out any of the possibilities I just listed above. We got virtually nothing on camera, and I retired from Bigfoot hunting before I even got out of the hospital. So I just don't know, and I no longer want to find out, at least not badly enough to go out there in the dark in the forest. Dogman already sent me to the hospital once. I don't have much of a desire to give him a chance to do worse.
Come back for more scary stories.